Hey guys, Chris here again, and we're back in the workshop. And today I actually want to work on two knife designs because I'm actually working on a lot of chef's knives recently because I want to make one or two cool chef knives that should be my main design. And not only that, I also want to try out a really cool texture on these two knives that you may have already seen on some handles, because you know me, I love texturing my knives, most of the times just my handle, but today I actually want to try it out on some steel. So let's start cutting out these knives. So I do have some ABL steel in 3mm, which is the right thickness and also a really nice knife steel. And I do already have these two templates here out of plastic. And I've got my trusty old blue die cam, and now I'm just going to mark the whole surface to scribe the outline. And now that I have covered this whole surface with blue die cam, I can add the knife templates, and I'm also going to hold them down with these two clamps, and then I can really nicely scribe them without them slipping around on the steel. So I've got now both knives scribed on the steel, and now it's actually time to grab my trusty old angle grinder and cut them out. So now that I got these two pieces cut out, I have to go now to my belt grinder and profile them into shape. So I've got now these two knives cut out on the belt grinder. They're now profiled and have their final shape. And the next step is going to be drilling out the pinholes. And not only that, I'm also going to drill a couple of more holes, and that suits for two purposes. The first is weight reduction in the handle, and also so the epoxy can flow through the handle, and both handle scales have just more epoxy between them. The more glue, the better. So I've got the handle holes now drilled out on the tang, and normally I would now start with the heat treatment, but because I want to add the textures, I would have to do them now before I go into the heat treatment. And I'm going to use the same Dremel bit that I'm using for my handle scales, and this is actually this little small round burr right here that goes into my Dremel, and I already tried it. It works on steel. So let's try it on the knives. Alright guys, so I'm now done with texturing both of these knives. This knife with the stippling texture actually took quite a while because I had to do each stipple by itself, and there are a lot of stipples on there. The stripe pattern actually went quite nice, and now these knives are actually ready for the heat treatment. And I want to heat treat these knives now because this is ABL, and ABL likes to warp like a banana during the heat treatment, and especially it is 3mm and quite long, and therefore I want to grind it all after the heat treatment. And because this is stainless steel, I now have to start wrapping up these knives in some stainless steel pouches so I can then plate quench them. And while I'm waiting on the oven to heat up to its final temperature, I already have these two wooden blocks. I know, Forgeworks, what is going on, but I want to do some wooden handles for these chef knives. I think that will just suit them just a little bit better. And what I also like to do is with these wooden handles, I like to put a liner underneath them and also have to get them really flat so we don't see any kind of glue gaps, and that's what I'm going to do right now. So the two chef knives are now heat treated. And that means I can now jump into my grinding room and start and also finish up the grind on these two chef knives.
Hey, I gotta cut to the chase. Everyone give me some space. Don't fall out, we fall into place. Every step walking with grace, amen. Keeping my foot off the brakes. Impact, I'm ready to brace. We fall down and land on our face. Just to get up and finally escape. Wait, boom, boom. Baby, I'm trying to get paid. Legends don't die in a grave. They live through the story they made, okay? Boom, boom. Baby, I'm trying to get paid. Legends don't die in a grave. Hey, legends don't die anyway. I was working on a play today. Body bag covered away. I paved, zipped up like a bathing ape. How many of us think?
So both of these knives are now ground on the belt grinder, and I still have to do some hand sanding, but I want to do one step before I'm going to hand sand them. Because when I was also in the grinding room, I already cleaned off the wooden handle scales with their liner, so now they're nice and clean, because now I actually want to start preparing the handle, and then afterwards I can start with the hand sanding so I don't scratch up my hand sanded finish while I'm working on the knife or I ding it, whatever, and that's why I want to prepare the handles right now. So the handle scales are now ready and prepared, and I've also finished up this area here because I cannot touch this after the handle is glued up. And now it is actually close to time for gluing up the handle, but beforehand I do have to sadly do some hand sanding, but for chef knives it is well worth it. So both of these blades are now hand sanded up to a 600 grit finish, and I think this is plenty for a workhorse knife. And now I have to glue up the handle, and I might play around with some ferric chloride later on when the handle is done to darken down the textured area so we get a little bit more contrast. I'm not sure yet, but I will think about it when I'm grinding the handle. So the epoxy is now dry on both of these handles, and that means I can now jump into my grinding room. And I will start with my belt grinders, and then I will finish them and polish them up by hand. So I'm now done with shaping and polishing both of the handles. And I already covered the first one with some nail polish on the handle to protect the wood, because now I want to do one of the final steps. And as I said before, I'm going to think about how to get a contrast on the texturing, and therefore I want to use some ferric chloride, and then I just have to polish the bevel up with some 600 grit. That should be quite easy. And I'm going to protect the wood with some nail polish so it doesn't colorize from the ferric chloride. So both of these chef knives are now done, and I'm actually pretty happy with the texture. You can see the stripe pattern that I normally add to my handle, and also the stippling pattern. But I think the stippling pattern looks just a little bit nicer than the stripe pattern, but I think that is up for your taste. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. If you got any kind of questions, just drop them down below. I will see us in the next one.